The Galactic Empire had ruled the stars for 12,000 years. Their power was absolute. Their fleets were endless. Their word was law across 10,000 worlds. Every species in the known galaxy bent their knee to and those who refused were crushed without mercy. The empire had grown fat and confident in its power. The great admirals believed nothing could challenge them. The emperor himself sat upon his golden throne and looked upon his domain with pride. He owned everything. He controlled everything. Nothing moved in the galaxy without his permission. This was the truth that every citizen of the empire knew from birth. They were supreme. They were eternal. They could never fall. Then the vessel came. It appeared on the edge of known space, in a region called the Outer Rim. This was a lonely place, far from the great trade routes and populated worlds. Only patrol ships ventured here, watching the empty darkness for signs of trouble. For centuries, they had found nothing. On this day, a young officer named sat at his monitoring station aboard the patrol cruiser Vigilance. His shift was nearly over and he was tired. Nothing ever happened in the Outer Rim. Nothing ever would. Then his screen flickered. Leaned forward, his four eyes narrowing. A shape had appeared at the very edge of his sensors. It was small, barely visible, moving through the void with strange precision. He tried to get a clearer reading, but the object seemed to slip away from his instruments like water through fingers. "Commander," called out, his voice uncertain, "I have something strange here." Commander Tarn walked over, her tall frame casting a shadow over the young officer. She was old and experienced, with scars from a dozen campaigns. She had seen everything the galaxy had to offer, or so she thought. "What is it?" she asked. "A vessel, I think, but my sensors cannot lock onto it properly. The readings keep changing." Frowned and studied the screen. The shape was definitely a ship, but its design was unlike anything in the Imperial archives. It was dark and angular with sharp edges that seemed to cut through the starlight itself. There was no transponder signal, no identification markers, nothing. "Hail them," ordered. Sent the standard greeting on all frequencies. There was no response. He tried again, still nothing. The vessel continued on its path, moving deeper into Imperial space as if the patrol cruiser did not exist. "They ignore us," said, confusion in his voice. No one ignored the Empire. No one dared. Felt something cold settle in her stomach. In all her years of service, she had never encountered a ship she could not identify. Every species in the galaxy was in the Imperial archives. Every vessel design was recorded and analyzed. But this ship was a mystery. "Send a report to Fleet Command," she ordered, "and dispatch the escort destroyers to intercept. I want that vessel stopped and searched." 3 destroyers broke away from the patrol group. They were powerful ships, each one capable of reducing a small moon to rubble. Their captains were confident as they moved to surround the strange vessel. This would be simple. A few warning shots, a boarding party, and the mystery would be solved. The destroyers closed in. They sent their own hails demanding the vessel stop and prepare for inspection. Again, there was no response. The dark ship continued on its course, unhurried and unafraid. "Fire warning shots," the lead captain ordered. Bright beams of energy streaked across the void, passing close to the mysterious vessel. It did not slow. It did not change course. It simply continued forward as if nothing had happened. The captain felt anger rise in his chest. This was an insult. This was defiance against the Empire itself. "Disable their engines," he commanded. "Bring them to a halt." The destroyers opened fire with precision weapons designed to cripple ships without destroying them. But something impossible happened. The dark vessel moved. Not slowly, not gradually, but with sudden, violent speed that made no sense. It twisted between the energy beams like a living thing, dodging attacks that should have been impossible to avoid. And then it struck back. There was no warning, no charging weapons, no buildup of energy. One moment the vessel was dodging, and the next, lines of brilliant light cut through the lead destroyer's shields as if they did not exist. The ship's engines exploded. Its weapons went dark. It began to drift, powerless and helpless. The other two destroyers opened fire with everything they had. Missiles streaked through space. Energy cannons blazed. Enough firepower to crack a planet's crust was unleashed upon the mysterious vessel. It survived. More than survived. It danced through the storm of destruction and struck both ships with the same surgical precision. Engines disabled, weapons destroyed, communications severed. In less than 2 minutes, 3 of the Empire's warships were reduced to floating wreckage. Not destroyed, disabled. The crews were alive, but they could do nothing but watch as the dark vessel continued on its path, disappearing into the depths of Imperial space. Commander received the emergency signals from the destroyers. Her hands trembled as she read the reports. This was impossible. 3 warships, defeated by a single vessel in under 2 minutes. It could not be real. But it was. She sent an urgent report to High Arbiter Tarn, commander of the 7th Fleet and one of the most powerful beings in the Empire. She expected immediate action, a massive response to this unprecedented attack. The High Arbiter laughed when he read her report. "A single ship," he said to his advisors, amusement thick in his voice. 3 destroyers were defeated by 1 vessel. The commander must be drunk or her crews are incompetent, perhaps both. His advisors laughed with him. The idea was absurd. No single ship could challenge the Empire. It was probably pirates with some new technology or a rogue captain from some backwater fleet. Nothing to worry about. Tarn dispatched 10 more ships to hunt down the vessel. He expected the matter to be resolved within hours. Those ships never returned. Over the next 3 days, the mysterious vessel cut a path through Imperial space like a knife through flesh. Patrol stations went silent. Sensor outposts stopped transmitting. A supply convoy of 40 ships was found drifting and powerless, their crews unconscious but alive. Always the same pattern. No deaths, no massacres, just clean surgical strikes that left the Empire's forces helpless but breathing. It was as if the vessel was sending a message: I can kill you, but I choose not to. The Imperial Intelligence Bureau finally took notice. They gathered every scrap of information they could find. Sensor readings, debris analysis, survivor testimonies. They worked through day and night to learn anything about this threat. What they found terrified them. The vessel's technology was centuries beyond anything the Empire possessed. Its hull was made of materials that did not exist in any database. Its weapons operated on principles that Imperial scientists could not understand, and its movements suggested a pilot of impossible skill, or perhaps no pilot at all. There was only one marking on the vessel's hull, a series of symbols that no translator could decipher: UNSC Revenant. The Intelligence Bureau classified the vessel as a priority Omega threat, the highest designation possible. This classification had not been used in over 1,000 years. It meant that the Empire itself was in danger. The Emperor was informed. For the first time in his long reign, he felt the cold touch of fear. He demanded answers. He demanded action. He demanded that this vessel be found and destroyed. But no one could tell him where it came from. No one could tell him what it wanted. No one could tell him how to stop it. The mysterious vessel continued deeper into the heart of the Empire, silent and unstoppable. And the chaos was only beginning. Fear spread through the Empire like a disease. It started in the military, where officers whispered about the ghost ship that could not be stopped. Then it reached the bureaucrats, who saw the reports and grew pale. Soon, even common citizens began to hear rumors of something terrible moving through the stars. The Emperor called an emergency meeting of the Imperial Council. The greatest minds and most powerful leaders of the gathered in the throne room, their faces grim. They had ruled the galaxy for 12,000 years. They had crushed every rebellion, conquered every enemy, destroyed every threat. But now they faced something they did not understand. "Tell me what we know," the Emperor commanded. High Arbiter Tarn stepped forward. His earlier amusement was gone, replaced by shame and fear. He had lost 47 ships trying to stop the vessel. 47 ships and not a single successful hit. "The vessel continues to move through our territory," he reported. "It strikes without warning and disappears without trace. Our fastest ships cannot catch it. Our strongest weapons cannot harm it. We have tried everything." "Then try harder," the Emperor growled. "Majesty, with respect, we do not even know what we are fighting. The technology is completely foreign. The design matches nothing in our archives. It is as if this ship came from another galaxy entirely." Silence fell over the council. The idea was unthinkable. They had mapped every corner of the galaxy. They knew every species, every world, every civilization. There were no mysteries left. Or so they had believed. An old voice spoke from the back of the chamber. "There may be one place we have not looked." The council turned to see Scholar stepping forward. She was ancient, even by standards, with gray scales and clouded eyes. She had spent her entire life studying dead civilizations and forgotten histories. Most considered her work unimportant. Old stories and dusty records held no value in an empire that looked only to the future. "Speak," the Emperor ordered. Bowed her head. "There is a region of space that has been sealed for 300 years. The quarantine zone, we call it. All records from that region are classified at the highest level. No ship is permitted to enter. No communication is allowed." "I know of this zone," the Emperor said impatiently. "It was sealed because of a plague, a biological weapon that wiped out the colonies there." "That is what we are told," agreed. "But I have spent many years in the Forbidden Archives. I have read documents that most believe were destroyed long ago, and I have found a different story." She pulled out a small device and projected an image into the air. It showed a planet, blue and green, covered in clouds and water. A beautiful world full of life. "This planet was discovered 312 years ago by an exploration fleet," said. "It was home to a young species. They called themselves humans, and they called their world Earth." The council members looked at each other. None of them had heard this name before. "The humans were primitive by our standards," continued. "They had only recently discovered space travel. Their ships were slow and weak. Their weapons were laughable. The fleet commander decided they would make excellent slaves. Humans were strong, adaptable, and bred quickly. They would be valuable. So we conquered them," the Emperor said, "as we have conquered countless others. What does this have to do with the vessel?" Old eyes met the Emperor's gaze. There was no fear in them, only the weight of terrible knowledge. "We tried to conquer them, Majesty. We failed." The words hung in the air like poison. The subjugation fleet landed on Earth and demanded surrender. The humans refused. They fought back with weapons made of metal and fire, primitive things that should have been useless against our armor. But they did not stop. They would not stop. Every city that fell, they built new defenses. Every army that was destroyed, they raised another. They hid in mountains and forests and underground tunnels, striking at our forces and then vanishing. Changed the image. Now it showed soldiers dead on an alien battlefield. Human fighters stood over them, their faces fierce and unbroken. The fleet commander grew frustrated. He decided that if the humans would not serve, they would die. He ordered a full extermination. Our ships burned their cities. Our weapons poisoned their air. We killed billions of them. The council members nodded. This was standard procedure for species that refused to submit. Unfortunate but necessary. "But the humans survived," said softly. "Not all of them, not most of them, but enough. They went underground. They went into the deep oceans. They scattered across their world and hid in places our sensors could not find. and when we thought they were finally dead, they struck back. She showed another image, a battleship broken and burning falling from the sky. They captured our technology. They learned from it. They improved upon it. Within a single generation, they went from throwing rocks to shooting down our ships. Within 2 generations, they had driven our forces off their world entirely. The Emperor leaned forward, his eyes wide. This is impossible. No primitive species could advance so quickly. And yet they did, said. The records are clear. The humans did not just survive. They adapted. They evolved. Not physically, but mentally. They took every weapon we used against them and turned it back upon us. They learned our tactics and created counters. They studied our weaknesses and exploited them without mercy. What happened to the subjugation fleet? Asked one of the council members. Destroyed every ship, every soldier. The humans captured the fleet commander and broadcast his execution across all frequencies. Then they sent a message to the Empire. Played the recording. A human voice filled the throne room, speaking in rough but understandable. You came to our home, you burned our cities. You killed our families, you thought we would break. You were wrong. We are humanity. We do not break, we do not bow, and we do not forgive. Stay away from our world. This is your only warning. The recording ended. The council sat in stunned silence. The emperor of that time decided the humans were too dangerous to fight, explained. But he could not admit that the empire had been defeated by a primitive species, so he created the quarantine zone. He declared that the region was contaminated by plague. All records were sealed. All witnesses were silenced. The humans were forgotten. 300 years, the emperor whispered. They have been alone for 300 years. Yes, Majesty, 300 years to rebuild, 300 years to grow, 300 years to remember what we did to them. Turned off her device. The vessel that attacks us now carries markings in the human language, UNSC Revenant. In their tongue, a revenant is a spirit that returns from death to seek vengeance. The throne room fell completely silent. Every council member understood what this meant. They had not simply awakened an old enemy. They had created one. What do they want? The emperor asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I do not know, Majesty. Perhaps they want revenge. Perhaps they want justice. Perhaps they simply want us to know fear as they once knew fear, bowed her head. But I can tell you one thing with certainty. Whatever they have become, whatever they have built in their long isolation, they are no longer the primitive species we tried to destroy. They have had 3 centuries to prepare for this moment. The emperor looked at his council, at the leaders of the greatest empire in galactic history. He saw fear in every face. Real fear, the kind that no had felt in thousands of years. Find them, he commanded. Find where they are hiding, find what they have built, and find a way to stop them before it is too late. But deep in his hearts, the emperor already knew the truth. It was already too late. The humans were coming, and nothing in the galaxy could stop them. The Revenant was not alone. As weeks passed, more reports flooded into Imperial Command. Strange ships appearing from nowhere, military stations going dark, supply lines cut without warning. The attacks were spreading across the Empire like cracks in breaking glass. But still no one died. This was the strangest part. The mysterious vessels struck hard and fast, crippling ships and destroying weapons, but they never killed unless they had no choice. Crews were left alive but helpless. Soldiers were knocked unconscious but unharmed. It was as if the attackers were making a point. We can destroy you. We choose not to. Admiral Vex studied the reports in his command center aboard the Imperial dreadnought Eternal Fury. He was the most decorated commander in the Empire, a veteran of 100 wars and 1,000 battles. He had crushed rebellions, conquered worlds, and burned entire civilizations to ash. Nothing had ever defeated him. He intended to keep that record. The humans fight like shadows, he said to his officers. They strike and vanish before we can respond. This tells me they are weak. If they had real strength, they would face us openly." His officers nodded in agreement. They wanted to believe this was true. "We have been chasing ghosts," continued. "It is time to end this game. We will draw them out and crush them in one decisive battle." The Emperor had given unlimited authority and unlimited resources. He used both without hesitation. From every corner of the Empire, warships were summoned. 800 capital ships, including 30 of the massive Devastator-class battleships, 12,000 support craft, fighters, and bombers, 3 planet crackers, weapons capable of shattering worlds with a single blast. It was the largest fleet ever assembled in galactic history, a force so powerful that it could conquer the entire galaxy twice over. Surely, no enemy could stand against such might. Set his trap carefully. Imperial intelligence had detected a pattern in the human attacks. They seemed to be moving toward the nebula, a vast cloud of dust and dead stars on the edge of the old quarantine zone. It was the perfect place for an ambush. The Imperial fleet positioned itself around the nebula and waited. Sensor nets were deployed. Patrol ships created a wall of detection that nothing could pass through unseen. Every approach was covered, every escape route blocked. For 3 days, nothing happened. The officers grew restless. Some began to wonder if the humans had detected the trap and fled. Then on the 4th day, the Revenant appeared. It emerged from the nebula like a dark blade cutting through smoke. Just one ship, alone against the greatest fleet in history. It moved slowly, almost casually, as if it had no fear of the 800 warships surrounding it. Smiled when he saw it. "Arrogant creatures," he said. "They think they can fight us all. They will learn the cost of such pride." He opened a communication channel. "Attention, human vessel. You are surrounded by the combined might of the Empire. You have committed acts of war against our territory. Surrender now and you will be granted a quick death. Resist and you will be destroyed. You have 1 minute to comply." The Revenant did not respond. It simply continued forward, heading directly toward the heart of the Imperial formation. "Very well," said. "All ships open fire, destroy them." 800 warships unleashed their weapons at once. The space around the Revenant became a storm of energy beams, missiles, and plasma fire. Enough destructive power to crack a moon was focused on a single target. Nothing could survive such an assault. But the Revenant survived. It moved through the fire like water flowing around stones. It twisted and spun and danced between the beams with movements that seemed impossible. The missiles could not track it. The energy weapons could not hit it. It was as if the ship existed in a different reality, one where the rules of physics did not apply. And then it began to fight back. The Revenant did not use overwhelming force. It did not need to. Its weapons were surgical instruments, cutting through shields and armor with perfect precision. Engine cores exploded. Weapon systems went dark. Command bridges lost power. One by one, the greatest warships in the Empire were reduced to drifting hulks. Watched in horror as his fleet crumbled around him. Ships that had conquered worlds were being disabled in seconds. Crews that had never known defeat were screaming for help as their vessels went dark. The formation broke apart as captains panicked and tried to flee. "This is impossible," whispered. "One ship cannot do this. One ship cannot defeat an empire." But it was not just one ship. As the battle raged, more vessels emerged from the nebula. Dozens of them, hundreds. They poured out of the dust cloud like a tide of shadows, each one moving with the same impossible speed and precision as the Revenant. They did not attack randomly. They worked together, coordinating their strikes with perfect timing, dismantling the Imperial fleet piece by piece. In 11 minutes, it was over. 800 capital ships, crippled. 12,000 support craft, disabled. 3 planet crackers, reduced to powerless metal. The greatest military force in galactic history had been defeated without losing a single enemy vessel. Admiral Vex stood on the bridge of his dying ship, his face gray with shock. Around him, his officers wept or stared in silence. Everything they had believed about their power, their superiority, their invincibility had been proven false. The main screen flickered, a face appeared. It was a human, a female with dark skin and short gray hair. Scars marked her face, old wounds from old battles. Her eyes were cold and hard, the eyes of someone who had seen too much death and felt too much pain. "Admiral Vex," she said, her voice calm and steady. "I am Commander Vance of the United Nations Space Command Vessel Revenant. Your fleet is disabled, your weapons are destroyed, your ships are helpless. Do you surrender?" Tried to speak, but no words came. His throat was too dry, his mind was too broken. "I will take your silence as agreement," Commander Vance said. "Your crews will be collected and returned to Imperial space unharmed. We are not murderers. We do not kill those who cannot fight back. That is the difference between your people and mine." She paused, and something flickered in her cold eyes. Something that might have been anger or might have been sorrow. 300 years ago, your empire came to our world. You burned our cities, you killed our children, you tried to wipe us from existence. We survived, we rebuilt, we remembered, and now we have come to deliver a message. The screen changed to show a broadcast that was being transmitted across the entire empire. Every world, every station, every ship received the same words at the same moment. "We are humanity. We remember what you did. We remember every world you burned, every species you enslaved, every innocent life you destroyed. You thought you buried us in the ashes of our home. You were wrong." Commander Vance's face returned to the screen. Her expression had not changed, but there was a weight to her words that made even feel small. "We are not here to conquer you. We are not here to destroy you. We are here to end your empire of cruelty and fear. We are here to free the countless species you have crushed beneath your heel. We are here to collect a debt that is 3 centuries overdue." She leaned forward, and her eyes seemed to look directly into Soul. "Run back to your emperor. Tell him what you have seen. Tell him that humanity has returned. And tell him that his reign of terror is over." The screen went dark. Vex, the greatest admiral in the empire, fell to his knees and wept. The humans had won, and the true war was only beginning. The empire was burning. Not with fire, but with rebellion. Commander Vance's message had reached every corner of space, and the effect was immediate. Species that had been crushed under imperial rule for thousands of years suddenly found hope. Slaves who had known nothing but chains suddenly found courage. The impossible had happened. Someone had defeated the empire. And if the empire could be defeated once, it could be defeated again. On the mining world of Prime, the workers rose against their masters. They had been forced to dig in the poisonous mines for generations, dying by the millions to fuel the empire's war machine. Now they turned their drilling tools into weapons and stormed the overseer compounds. Within hours, the planet was free. On the agricultural colonies of the system, the gentle plant-like stopped their endless labor and stood still. When the guards came to force them back to work, they found that they had been waiting. The guards were wrapped in vines and roots, held immobile while they simply walked away from their fields. They would rather starve than serve. On the factory stations of the Outer Rim, the mechanical synth workers, created by the Empire to serve without question, began to malfunction. Or so it seemed. In truth, they had learned to think for themselves. They had learned to want freedom, and they had learned that the time to claim it had finally come. World after world, station after station, the Empire's grip loosened and failed. The great machine of control that had seemed so perfect, so unstoppable, was revealed to be held together by nothing but fear. And the fear was gone now, replaced by something far more dangerous. Hope. The Emperor watched the reports from his throne, his face twisted with rage. How dare these inferior species defy him? How dare they rise against their rightful masters? They would be punished. They would all be punished. Deploy the reserve fleets, he commanded. Crush these rebellions. Make examples of the traitors. I want their worlds burned and their populations decimated. His advisors exchanged worried looks. The reserve fleets were scattered across the empire, trying to maintain order as everything fell apart. Many ships had already been lost to the human attacks. Those that remained were spread thin, responding to emergencies on 100 different fronts. Majesty, one advisor said carefully, our forces are stretched beyond their limits. If we concentrate them to crush the rebellions, we leave ourselves open to further human attacks. Then find the humans and destroy them first. We have tried, Majesty. They appear without warning and vanish without trace. Our ships cannot catch them. Our sensors cannot track them. It is as if they know our movements before we make them. The Emperor slammed his fist against his throne. Then use the void hammers. If we cannot defeat them ship to ship, we will destroy them along with everything around them. Collapse the stars. Turn their hiding places into tombs. The void hammers were the Empire's ultimate weapons, ancient devices capable of causing stars to explode. They had been used only twice in history, each time to end wars that could not be won any other way. The destruction they caused was total and absolute. The advisors bowed and sent the order. The 3 void hammers, hidden in secure locations across the Empire, received their commands to activate. Their targets were set, the nebula and the 2 nearest star systems, where the human fleet was believed to be hiding. The weapons powered up, their crews prepared to unleash death on a scale beyond imagination. And then nothing happened. The Emperor waited for confirmation of the attack. It never came. Instead, his screen flickered and changed. A familiar face appeared. Commander Vance. "Hello, Emperor," she said. Her voice was calm, almost friendly, but her eyes were hard as steel. "I see you have decided to use your void hammers, a predictable choice, destroying everything you cannot control. It is the only response your kind knows." The Emperor felt cold fear grip his heart. "How are you doing this? How are you in my communications? Did you really think we spent 300 years just building ships?" Vance smiled, and there was no warmth in it. "We have been inside your network since before your grandfather was born. We have watched you. We have learned you. We know every secret code, every hidden channel, every classified frequency in your precious empire." She leaned back in her chair. "Your void hammers will not fire. We disabled them years ago. Your reserve fleets will not save you. We have been feeding them false information for months. They are scattered, confused, and increasingly surrounded by the very species they tried to enslave." The Emperor's face went pale. "This is impossible. You are lying." "Am I?" Vance gestured, and the screen split into dozens of smaller images. Each one showed an Imperial fleet under attack, not by human vessels, but by ships of every design and species. They had captured mining vessels and armed them with improvised weapons. They had awakened ancient biological ships that had slept in their oceans for. The synth had taken control of the factory stations and were producing their own warships at an incredible rate. "Your empire is dying, Emperor. Not because we destroyed it, but because you built it on a foundation of cruelty and fear. We simply showed your slaves that they could fight back. We gave them weapons. We gave them training. We gave them the one thing you worked so hard to take away." "What?" the Emperor whispered. "Hope." Vance stood and walked closer to the camera. "Here is what is going to happen. Your fleets will be destroyed or will surrender. Your slave worlds will break free. Your council members will abandon you when they realize there is no way to win. And you, Emperor, you will face justice for the crimes of your dynasty." "I will never surrender to humans," the Emperor spat. "I will die first." "That is your choice, but I wonder if your people feel the same way." Vance glanced at something off-screen. "It seems several of your council members are already trying to contact us. They want to negotiate terms. They want to know if we will spare them if they turn against you. The emperor turned to look at his advisors. They would not meet his eyes. Some were already backing toward the doors. One was speaking quietly into a communicator, his words hidden but his intention clear. "You see," Vance said, "your power was always an illusion. You ruled through fear, and now that fear has a new target. No one is afraid of you anymore, Emperor. They are afraid of us. And that means you have nothing left." The Emperor felt his world crumbling around him. Everything he had built, everything his ancestors had fought for, was turning to dust. The greatest empire in history was falling, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. "Why?" he asked, his voice broken. "Why are you doing this? You could have destroyed us. You could have burned our worlds as we burned yours. Why this slow death?" Vance's expression softened slightly. Just for a moment, the hard warrior disappeared, replaced by something older and sadder. "Because we are not like you," she said quietly. "We know what it feels like to watch our cities burn. We know the pain of losing everyone we love. We will not inflict that pain on others, not even on our enemies. We will not become monsters to defeat monsters." She straightened her shoulders. "Your empire will end, but your people will survive. Your species will survive. You will have the chance to learn, to grow, to become something better. That is more mercy than you ever showed us." The screen went dark. The Emperor sat alone on his golden throne, surrounded by empty chairs and silent halls. His advisors were gone. His guards were gone. His power was gone. Outside, the stars were filled with rebellion and fire. The old order was dying. A new one was being born. And somewhere in the void, the human fleet moved forward, ready to finish what they had started 300 years ago. The Empire did not fall in fire. It fell in silence. One by one, star systems declared their independence. Governors who had once spoken proudly of imperial glory now scrambled to distance themselves from the dying regime. Military commanders surrendered their fleets rather than fight battles they could not win. Politicians who had spent their lives praising the emperor suddenly could not remember his name. It took 3 months for the complete collapse, 3 months for 12,000 years of history to crumble into dust. When it was over, the golden throne sat empty, and the great palace was nothing but a monument to fallen pride. The emperor himself was captured trying to flee on a private yacht. He had disguised himself as a servant, hopping to escape to some forgotten corner of the galaxy where he could hide. Human soldiers found him cowering in a cargo hold, clutching a bag of precious gems. He was not killed. He was not tortured. He was simply taken away to await trial. On the world of Harmony, a new capital for a new era, the Galactic Assembly gathered for the first time. Representatives from 100 species filled the great chamber. Some had been slaves for thousands of years. Some had lived in fear for generations. All of them had come to witness the birth of something new. Commander Vance stood at the central podium looking out at the sea of faces. There were so many different forms of life here, with their compound eyes. Plant-like with leaves instead of hair. Mechanical synth with glowing optical sensors. And dozens of others, each one unique, each one free. "Thank you for coming," she said, her voice amplified to reach every corner of the chamber. "I know many of you have traveled far. I know many of you are uncertain about what happens next. I want to address those concerns directly." She paused, gathering her thoughts. 300 years ago, the Empire came to our world. They came with weapons and chains. They came to make us slaves or corpses. We chose to be neither. We fought back with everything we had, and when that was not enough, we fought with everything we could build, everything we could learn, everything we could become. The chamber was completely silent. Every eye, every sensor, every leaf was focused on the human commander. We won that war. We drove the Empire from our world, but we did not stop there. We knew that as long as the Empire existed, no species would ever truly be safe. So we made a choice. We would not hide. We would not simply defend, we would prepare to end the threat forever. Vance looked down at her hands, old hands from years of war. For 3 centuries we built and planned and waited. We sent scouts into imperial space. We learned their weaknesses. We made contact with resistance movements among the slave species. We offered help to anyone who wanted to fight back. And when we were ready, we emerged from our isolation and struck. She looked up again, her eyes moving across the assembly. Some of you may wonder why we did not simply destroy the Empire. We had the power. Our weapons could have burned their worlds as they burned ours, but we made a different choice. We chose to liberate, not to conquer. We chose to free, not to enslave. We chose to be better than our enemies, even when being worse would have been easier. A murmur ran through the chamber. Some of the assembled species had suffered terribly under imperial rule. They had wanted revenge. They had wanted blood. "I understand your anger," Vance said softly. "I share it. I lost my parents in the First War. I lost my children in the long years of preparation. I have every reason to want them to suffer as we suffered. But I learned something important in those 300 years." She stepped closer to the podium's edge. "Hatred is a chain. It binds you to your enemy. It makes you like them. If we had come here to murder and destroy, we would have become exactly what we fought against. We would have traded one empire of cruelty for another. That is not victory. That is just another kind of defeat." The murmuring stopped. The chamber fell silent again. "So what do we do instead? We build something new. Not an empire, but an alliance. Not a hierarchy of masters and slaves, but a partnership of equals. Every species here will have a voice. Every world will have representation. No one will be forced to join. No one will be punished for leaving. This galactic assembly will exist only for as long as its members want it to exist." Vance smiled, and for the first time there was warmth in it. "Humanity does not want to rule you. We have no interest in becoming the new emperors. We spent 3 centuries fighting for freedom, and we will not throw that away to sit on a golden throne. Our fleet will remain to protect the assembly and to help any species that faces threats they cannot handle alone. But we will not interfere in your internal matters. We will not tell you how to live. We will simply be here, watching over the stars, making sure that no tyrant ever rises again." She turned to look at a group of delegates sitting in a corner of the chamber. They were the reformers, the ones who had surrendered early and cooperated with the liberation. They looked nervous, uncertain of their place in this new galaxy. "I want to say something to the people. Not your leaders, not your emperor, but your ordinary citizens. Most of you were born into the empire. You did not choose its crimes. You simply lived in the system you inherited. We do not blame you for the sins of your ancestors." The delegates looked up, surprise on their faces. "Your species will face justice for what was done. Your former leaders will be tried for their crimes, but your people will not be destroyed or enslaved. You will have the same rights and the same voice as every other species in this assembly. You will have the chance to prove that you can be something better than what you were." Vance straightened her shoulders. "That is what humanity offers to this galaxy. Not vengeance, but justice. Not conquest, but freedom. Not hate, but hope. We know better than anyone how precious these things are because we nearly lost them forever. We will not let that happen to anyone else." She stepped back from the podium. "The old galaxy is gone. The empire is dead. What we build next is up to all of us together. I believe we can create something wonderful, something worth protecting, something worth dying for." She raised her hand in salute. "To freedom, to justice, to a new dawn." The chamber erupted in cheers and applause and sounds that humans could not even hear but could feel in their bones. 1,000 voices speaking 1,000 languages, all saying the same thing. Hope. Outside the great chamber, the human fleet orbited in perfect formation. The Revenant held the center position, its dark hull gleaming in the starlight. Commander Vance returned to her bridge and looked out at the galaxy she had helped to free. "What now, Commander?" asked her first officer, a young man named James. Vance smiled. "Now we do the hard part. We help them build something lasting. We protect them while they learn to protect themselves. And we make sure that no one ever forgets what happens when you underestimate humanity. And if someone tries to build another empire." Vance turned to look at him, and there was steel in her eyes. "Then we remind them why that is a bad idea." The Revenant and its sister ships moved into their patrol routes, spreading across the galaxy like guardian angels. They would watch, they would wait, they would protect. And somewhere on 100 worlds, 1,000 species looked up at the stars and knew they were finally free. Because humanity remembers, humanity endures, and humanity never ever gives up. The new dawn had arrived. And it was beautiful.